This is the first in a series of videos that I'm making primarily for my own students, but obviously I'm putting it on my YouTube channel for anyone to use. So these videos are meant for pure beginners on the bagpipe. I'm not dealing with advanced students at this point, and I just want to provide a resource, again, primarily for my own students to go back and look at what they experienced with me in person. All of these lessons, all of these videos are based on material that you can find in the Highland Bagpipe Tutor Book, which was first published in 2001 by the National Piping Centre in Scotland. Now it looks like this. It's a blue covered book with a spiral binding. There's another book that they published that has a green cover, also with a spiral binding, although it's a different format. It's a smaller format book. This is an A4 size. It's almost a little bit bigger than our 8.5 by 11 size in the US. But this is what it looks like. It's a nice colorful book. So that's the book I'm assuming that you're using. It's the book I've used with my students for at least 15 years now with a lot of success. The first thing you encounter in this book on page 1, chapter 1, is the 3 basic parts of a practice chanter. So you've got the chanter part, which is obviously the part that you're going to be playing your scales and your melodies on. It looks like this, and it's got 8 finger holes on it, 7 in front, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1 at the very top of the chanter on the back. The next big part is the top of the practice chanter. In the old days, this used to very often be in 2 parts. There was this part here and then a mouthpiece that you could screw off, because occasionally the mouthpieces would get degraded, people would bite through them or they would decay, and you could just screw that off and put a new one on. But these days, with the plastics they're using for all plastic chanters, which this is, you can still get wooden ones, but a lot of people play all plastic chanters that are made of a really high quality plastic called polypenco or acetyl plastic. It's all one piece, so it's very difficult to destroy any part of this chanter. The third really important component of a practice chanter is the reed, and just like in the bagpipe chanter, you've got what's called a double reed. Double reeds are what's played in oboes and bassoons. You want to be very careful with your reed. These are between $10 and $15 a piece. You never want to grab it or squeeze it by anywhere near its tip. Some practice chanter reeds look a little different from this. This one happens to be made by John Walsh up in Nova Scotia, Canada. I like them very much. They're very robust, reliable. They produce a good scale and a good sound. So when you go to assemble the chanter, and it's probable that you've received it in the post, and it's in these 3 parts. They may have actually taken the reed, wrapped it in a bit of paper, and put it up inside the chanter cap. You're going to take these 3 components, take your reed, definitely down by closer to the tube and by this yellow wrapping, and put it into the reed seat. Kind of give it a push and a twist, and that should seat it nicely. Make sure it's fairly straight in there, okay? It's a bit crooked. Actually, I'm going to straighten that out. That looks pretty good. Now, this part of the practice chanter, and indeed parts of the bagpipe that have this kind of yellowish, sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's black wrapping. This part, if you were a woodwind player, a classical woodwind player, or a saxophone player, clarinetist, you would actually call this part of the instrument a tenon, T-E-N-O-N, tenon, which is where 2 parts of the instrument come together. So traditionally, our tenons as pipers are wrapped with a yellow thread that we generically call hemp, even though it's not really hemp thread. So this is what it looks like. It typically comes in spools like this. This is the traditional unwaxed hemp. You can also get hemp that's been waxed with a bit of beeswax and paraffin wax. And then sometimes we also use black waxed hemp. So this is a very nice durable hemp with a lot of stickiness to it, good for a lot of different uses in piping. So we've got these 2 parts together. Now what we're going to do is take the bottom grab this part of the practice chanter, which is called the bulb or bowl, with our index finger and thumb, and then wrap the rest of our hand around it like that. Take the top like this and carefully guide the reed into the chanter top. Give it a few twists to get it in there. Hopefully it'll fit together nicely. Hopefully it's not too loose or too tight. If it's too loose, you may not have bought yourself some of the traditional material when you bought the practice chanter because you didn't know what you needed, right? So you can actually use a bit of polyester sewing thread or cotton thread to bulk up that tenon a little bit. And just wrap a couple twists around it. See if you can bulk it up so it fits together nice and firmly, not too tight. And then you've got your practice chanter assembled. So your next step is to figure out how to place your fingers and hands on this thing. I've had the most success starting with the top and working my way down. Now, I'm right-handed. Most of my students are right-handed. So you're going to have to reverse this if you're left-handed. But if I'm right-handed, I'm going to take my left hand with my left thumb on the very top hole on the back of the practice chanter first. I'm going to place my thumb on that hole, okay? Then I'm going to come to the front of the chanter and place my index finger on the first hole on the top of the chanter, on the front of the chanter, middle finger, ring finger. This pinky is the only finger that a piper doesn't use for anything. It just kind of sits there, okay? So what I'm next going to do is take my right hand, again, I'm a right-handed piper, take my right hand and I'm going to place kind of a beefier part of my lower index finger over the next hole down. And I'll get to the reason why we do that in a moment. But I'm going to put almost the second joint of that index finger over that next hole. And then I'm just going to let the other fingers fall naturally in the same place on the holes below. So if you look at my hands, you'll see that I've almost got the tips of my top fingers covering the top holes, but I've almost got, you know, the second joint of my top four fingers down here covering the lower holes. Now, why is that? Well, the reason is because when you transition to the full bagpipe chanter, the lower holes on the full bagpipe chanter are a heck of a lot bigger. So you don't want to try and use the tips of your lower fingers to cover those massive holes. It's much easier to cover those holes with beefier parts of your fingers. So back to the practice chanter. That's all the reason you need right now. Back to the practice chanter. Now, what am I doing with my thumb on my right hand? So your thumb is basically more or less flat against the back of the chanter, opposite your middle finger. So here is your posture for your fingers and your hands, right? Notice that I'm not allowing my wrist to bend in too much. I'm not raising my arms too high. Meanwhile, I'm just in a nice, relaxed place. My hands are in a nice, relaxed position. I'm not too rigid, not like this. I'm just letting my hands just rest on the chanter, okay? Now, you may need to repeat this a few times, starting at the top and working your way down, okay? The highest hole in the back, next hole, next hole, next hole, pinkies free, next hole, next hole, next hole, next hole. Your thumb, right thumb in the back, opposite your middle finger, more or less flat against the surface of the chanter. Now, if you've covered all the holes properly, you should be able to blow through the chanter and produce the lowest note on the chanter, which is a low G. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, now you might be getting a sound something like this. That probably means one of two things. Either you're not blowing hard enough or you're missing covering one of the holes, either on the top or on the bottom. So check your finger positions, check the holes, and I'm going to blow a series of low Gs for you and see if you can kind of play along with me. One more. Note that I'm resting the bottom of the chanter, called the sole, on the table. My arms or elbows are not on the table. I'm up here. My elbows are not crazy out like that or anything. Just a nice, comfortable position. Okay? Good luck.